So to begin our lesson today, we're actually going to start in our read aloud. So you're going to need a copy of The Civil Rights Movement by Jennifer Zeiger. We're just going to start out by doing a quick book tour. So I want you to just look around the front of the book, the back of the book. What are some questions or connections you already can make? What are some things that already seem familiar that we've already talked about a little bit in class? We're going to be using this book both for a read aloud and to answer some written questions afterwards. So if you don't have this book yet, you're going to need it. So pause the video here and go get it if you don't have it already. We're going to start on page 6. So go ahead and turn to page 6 entitled Setting the Scene, Slavery and Segregation. I'm going to give us all just a second to get started. So I'm going to give us just a beat, make sure you're ready, maybe a tracking finger to help you follow along. Setting the scene, slavery and segregation. The Ku Klux Klan dressed in white hooded gowns for its rallies. The KKK had millions of members at the height of its power. So already I'm starting to ask questions about what is the Ku Klux Klan if I have not heard of that organization already, and how can this picture help me build an understanding of what this group might have to do with the civil rights movement. The end of the American Civil War spelled the end of slavery in the United States. When the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was adopted in December 1865, slavery was officially outlawed. The 14th Amendment was adopted 3 years later. It granted citizenship to recently freed slaves and was designed to further protect their rights. In 1870, the 15th Amendment gave all African American men the right to vote. So I'm going to pick right back up at the word laws in the last paragraph on page 7. Laws limited what African Americans could do and where they could go. The laws were intended to segregate white and black Americans. Many African Americans were also kept from voting. They were given reading tests many could not pass and were required to pay a tax they could not afford before registering to vote. The whites giving the test would often fail African Americans even though they were able to read. Separated from white society and unable to vote, African Americans had limited power to improve their status. But as the years passed, black and white leaders began to find ways to overcome these limitations. So to make sure that I completely understand everything the text is saying and start to build my civil rights historian vocabulary, I'm going to look back at some of these bolded words that the text is giving me to emphasize that they're key words or important for my understanding of the story. So the first one I see is on page 7 in the second paragraph. It's the second sentence. It says, white supremacists who believed African Americans were inferior joined groups such as the Ku Klux Klan or KKK. So I see that the word supremacist is bolded. So I'm going to use first my context clues to figure out what I think that word might mean using my background knowledge, and then I'm going to check that using the glossary at the end of this book. So based on my background knowledge, I know that a lot of white citizens, especially in history, did not believe that African Americans deserved equal rights because that they thought that they were less deserving, that they were lesser people. So if I'm thinking about the word supremacist, that reminds me of the word supreme. So people who think that they are better than other people. So I'm going to anticipate that the word supremacist means people who believed that they were better than other groups. Now I'm going to check myself before I wreck myself, head to the back of my book where I can find my glossary to double check the meaning of that word. So my glossary, I remember, is just an embedded dictionary of those key vocabulary terms. So as I skim down, I'm going to see that the very last word on this page is supremacist. And it says, supremacist, people who believe that a group is superior to another group. So again, I know that the word superior means better than. So those are a group of people that believed one group was better than another group. So now I'm inside my Google Classroom folder titled Civil Rights Movement Research Quest Graphic Organizers. And this folder is going to house all of the graphic organizers that are helping me collect information as I read. So I'm going to scroll down into my glossary, which is going to help me keep track of key terms and their definitions as I'm reading. These might be academic terms that are highlighted in my text, or they might just be terms that I run across while I'm reading that I don't know, and I use either a dictionary or my computer to look up. So the word that I pulled out first was supremacist. So we're going to go ahead and track that one now. And now we're going to add in our definition that I've collected from my background knowledge and from my glossary. So I know that a supremacist are people who believe that a group is superior or better than another group. So later on in that same paragraph, I see a second bolded word. I'm going to read that sentence now. The laws were intended to segregate white and black Americans. So now I want you to try using your background knowledge and then checking yourself with the glossary in the back of the book. What do you think that the word segregate means? I want you to sub in another word or just a really short definition in your own words.